I don't know how many of you have actually heard of AI or artificial intelligence, but they've gone big just recently in the last 6 months of releasing all this AI tech. You've got ones that will generate images from text or even video from text, as well as a chat, like a chat GPT, has a massive database of the internet, and it can retrieve that information within a matter of seconds or split second. And it's a very good source to get information from. Google itself is actually quite scared of it. They've got their own AI coming out, but they had to shut it down at the moment, if you've heard about it. But yeah, it's you can get information within seconds. You try and ask Google a question, you have to go through it's a search engine, so you got to go through pages where they're talking about it. Then you got to go through vlogs, and until you get the information. Well, with Chat GPT, you get the information instantly. If you have a problem with just let's say a software and you don't know what to do, let's say Microsoft Office, and you were trying to do a certain thing, you're trying to put in bullets or the line spacing or paragraphs or whatever, that sort of thing. Or even in Excel, and trying to resize a certain cell or put formulas in. Even programming, HTML, C++, C Sharp, PHP, anything like that at all, it will do it. All you got to do is tell it to do it. So, in the meantime, I gave it some questions about the environment, and this is what it came back with. But before we do go ahead with the video, I did convert the text to voice, so it's just reading it out to you. That's not actually the way ChatGPT is. It comes back with text, but I've converted it. Enjoy. I'm going to do a documentary video on how it is important to have CO2 in our atmosphere. This means for the planet and humans and all other living things on the planet to survive. And what would it be like if CO2 ceased to exist? Can you write a detailed script on how it is important to keep CO2 in our atmosphere, and what might happen if the whole world went net zero on CO2?
It's important to remember that while CO2 is a necessary component of life on Earth, excessive amounts can have negative effects. The key is to strike a balance and work towards sustainable solutions that reduce emissions while still allowing for the survival of all living things. We must strive to protect our planet and its inhabitants for generations to come.
When governments meant zero CO2, do they actually mean zero?
When governments set goals of net zero CO2 emissions, they typically mean that they are aiming to reduce their overall greenhouse gas emissions to as close to zero as possible, with the goal of achieving a balance between the amount of CO2 emitted and the amount removed from the atmosphere. This can be done through a combination of reducing emissions from industries and transportation, increasing the use of renewable energy sources, and using carbon capture and storage technology. It's important to note that achieving net zero emissions does not necessarily mean that CO2 emissions will be completely eliminated. It may be technically or economically infeasible to achieve zero emissions in certain sectors. However, the goal is to reduce emissions as much as possible and offset any remaining emissions through activities such as reforestation or carbon sequestration. It's also worth noting that achieving net zero emissions is important not only to prevent global warming, but also to meet the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
What are the CO2 levels today globally?
As of 2021, the global CO2 levels have been consistently increasing. The most recent data from the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, which has been measuring CO2 levels since 1958, shows that the concentration of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere is currently at around 414 parts per million. This is a significant increase from the pre-industrial levels of around 280 ppm. The increase in CO2 levels is largely due to human activities such as the burning of fossil fuels for energy, deforestation, and land use changes. This increase in CO2 levels is a major contributor to climate change and global warming. It's worth noting that the CO2 level fluctuates seasonally, with a peak in the Northern Hemisphere's summer and a minimum in the Northern Hemisphere's winter. Also, there are other observatories that measure CO2 levels globally. The Mauna Loa Observatory is just one among them. Their values may have slight variations, but overall trend remains the same. It's important to understand that the CO2 levels are important not just because they are a contributor to climate change, but also they are a measure of how much we are depleting the natural sink of CO2 in the Earth, which is crucial for maintaining the balance of the Earth's climate.
Is it possible to be fully solar or wind powered for every residential or business, all motor vehicles and machinery, including all the farmers' machinery, globally, knowing that there is a very limited supply of lithium on Earth?
It is technically possible for the world to be fully powered by solar and wind energy. But it would require significant investments in renewable energy infrastructure and technology, as well as changes in energy consumption patterns. One of the main challenges in achieving 100% solar and wind power is the storage and distribution of the energy generated. Solar and wind power are variable and dependent on weather conditions, so energy storage systems such as batteries would be necessary to ensure a consistent supply of power, especially during periods of low sunlight or wind. Another challenge is the limited supply of lithium, a key component in the batteries used for energy storage. While lithium deposits are relatively abundant in the Earth, mining and extracting it can be costly and environmentally damaging. However, there is ongoing research on alternative materials for energy storage such as sodium-ion batteries, which could potentially provide a more sustainable and cost-effective solution. Additionally, even if we were to fully transition to solar and wind energy, the usage of other energy sources such as hydroelectricity, geothermal, and biomass will still be necessary to meet the energy demands of certain sectors such as agriculture, transportation, and heavy industry. In summary, while it is technically possible to be fully powered by solar and wind energy, it would require significant investments and technological advancements to overcome challenges such as energy storage and distribution, as well as addressing the limitations in lithium supply.
Okay, so what about the batteries that die over time or fail? Batteries are bad for the environment, correct? So what's going to happen to these batteries when they die or fail? This will destroy the planet more than CO2, correct?
Batteries used for energy storage, such as those used in solar and wind power systems, do have a limited lifespan and will eventually need to be replaced or recycled. The disposal of used batteries can have negative environmental impacts if not properly managed. For example, if batteries are not recycled, they can release toxic chemicals into the environment and contribute to pollution. However, there are several ways to mitigate the environmental impact of used batteries. One of the most important ways is to recycle them properly, which can extract valuable materials such as lithium, nickel and cobalt for reuse, and also prevent the release of toxic materials into the environment. Many countries have laws and regulations in place to ensure that used batteries are properly recycled. And some companies have developed advanced recycling technologies to recover more of the materials used in batteries. Another solution is to develop batteries that have a longer lifespan, or that are more easily recyclable. Some companies are working to develop batteries made from more sustainable materials, such as sodium-ion batteries, which could potentially be recycled more easily than traditional lithium-ion batteries. Overall, it is important to consider the life cycle of batteries when transitioning to renewable energy systems, and to ensure that proper recycling and disposal systems are in place. It is also important to continue research and development of sustainable batteries and recycling technologies to reduce the environmental impact. It's also worth noting that the environmental impact of batteries alone should not be compared to the environmental impact of CO2 emissions, as they have different impacts on the environment. The CO2 emissions cause global warming, which affects the entire planet, while the impact of batteries is more localized.
There are landfills of dead batteries now all over the earth. What are we going to do?
You are correct that there are currently landfills filled with used batteries, and the challenge of properly disposing of and recycling used batteries is significant. It is true that not all used batteries can be recycled by 2050, given the current recycling technology and infrastructure. However, it is important to note that the recycling and disposal of batteries is an ongoing process, and improvements in technology and infrastructure can help to increase the rate of recycling and reduce the environmental impact of used batteries over time. By implementing regulations and laws for the proper disposal of batteries, increasing the recycling rate, and investing in new technologies, it is possible to reduce the environmental impact of used batteries. Additionally, research and development of sustainable batteries, such as sodium-ion batteries, that can be recycled easily can also help to reduce the environmental impact. It's also worth mentioning that, as the world is moving towards renewable energy, the number of batteries used will increase, and thus the amount of used batteries will increase as well. However, the environmental impact of these batteries is relatively small compared to the environmental impact of fossil fuels. Additionally, as the renewable energy technology is improving, the lifespan of batteries is also increasing, which will help to reduce the environmental impact of used batteries. It's important to continue to work on finding solutions to properly dispose of and recycle used batteries to minimize their environmental impact, and at the same time, we should also strive to reduce the overall consumption of fossil fuels and increase the use of renewable energy, which will have a much larger impact on the environment.